welcome to my presentation. Today I'll be discussing the Universal Design for Learning, also known as UDL, and how it connects to special education and inclusive classrooms. UDL is an educational framework that focuses on designing learning experiences that are accessible and flexible for all students from the very beginning, rather than making changes only after students experience difficulties. This presentation focuses on how education is shifting towards supporting all learners within the regular classroom through flexible teaching practices, accommodations, collaboration, and student-centered learning. Over the years, schools have moved away from the idea that students with exceptionalities should always be taught separately. Instead, there is now a much greater focus on inclusion, equity, and ensuring that all students feel a sense of belonging within the classroom community. As future educators, understanding UDL is important because classrooms today are more diverse than ever. Teachers are supporting students with a wide range of learning styles, language backgrounds, strengths, needs, and abilities. Some students may need academic support, and some may need behavioral or emotional support, and others may need assistive technology or accommodations. UDL helps teachers create learning environments where students can succeed without feeling singled out or excluded. Throughout this presentation, I'll be discussing how inclusive education has evolved, the role of accommodations and modifications, tiered supports, collaboration amongst professionals, and how teachers can create flexible learning environments that help all students thrive. So, the educational landscape has changed so much in recent years. More students are now being supported in regular classrooms rather than in separate programs, and schools are continuing to move toward the inclusive education model. As specialized programs still do exist, but there is a growing expectation that classroom teachers will be supporting a broad range of learning needs within one classroom setting. We are also seeing changes in ESL, which is English as a Second Language programming, and specialized classroom structures. Many students who may have once been placed into separate learning environments, or known as like self-contained ESL classes, are now integrated into mainstream classrooms with support. This creates opportunities for inclusion and social belonging, but it also increases the responsibilities placed on teachers. Today's classrooms include students with varying academic abilities, behavioral needs, learning disabilities, mental health challenges, language barriers, and exceptionalities. Because of this, teachers need flexible strategies that allow students to access learning in different ways. One teaching approach or assignment format no longer works for every learner. This is why UDL and inclusive practices are becoming proactively about accessibility rather than reactively about after problems occur. Inclusive classrooms require flexibility, patience, collaboration, and strong relationship building. Another important shift is the growing understanding that inclusion is not just about placing students physically in the classroom. True inclusion means students feel valued, supported, and capable of participating meaningfully in learning experiences. It's about building classroom communities where diversity is viewed as a strength rather than a challenge. UDL matters. UDL helps remove barriers before students struggle. Traditionally, schools, what they've done is they've often waited until students fail or they fell behind before supports were put into place. But UDL changes this approach by encouraging teachers to design lessons that are flexible and accessible just from the beginning. Right from the beginning. The idea behind UDL is that the learner variability is normal. Every classroom contains students who learn differently, process information differently, and express understanding differently. Instead of expecting all students to fit into one teaching style, UDL encourages teachers to create multiple pathways for learning. UDL is based on three main principles. The first is providing multiple means of engagement, which focuses on motivation and participation. Students engage differently depending on their interests, their cultural backgrounds, their confidence levels, and learning preferences. Teachers can increase engagement by offering choices, making learning relevant, and creating supportive classroom environments. The second principle is providing multiple means of representation. This means presenting information in different ways, such as visuals, videos, verbal explanations, hands-on learning, which we like to call manipulatives, graphic organizers, or demonstrations. Students process information differently, so presenting context in multiple formats can help increase accessibility. The third principle of why UDL matters, is that providing multiple means of action and expression. Students should have different ways to demonstrate understanding. Some students may communicate better through writing, while others may show learning more effectively through presentations, projects, discussions, or even the use of technology. Overall, UDL matters because it promotes equity and accessibility. It helps students feel capable and supported while reducing frustration and barriers to learning. In secondary school, students may work towards diploma pathways or certificate pathways such as MAPS or STEPS programs. These pathways help students work towards goals that align with their strengths, abilities, and future plans. With de-streaming, more students are entering academic level courses together rather than being separated into different streams early on. This change aims to create more equitable opportunities for students. However, it also means that classrooms now include a wider range of academic abilities and support needs. An important point to understand is that high school credits cannot be modified if students are working towards a diploma. Students may receive accommodations, but the curriculum expectations themselves cannot be changed. This means that students need strong foundational literacy, numeracy, organizational, and self-regulational skills before entering secondary school. Elementary education therefore plays a major role in preparing students for future success. Teachers in the early years help build foundational skills that students rely on through their education. If students miss important concepts in reading, writing, or math early on, those gaps can become very difficult to address later on and fill. Certificate pathways such as MAPS and STEPS are designed for students whose needs are better supported through alternative programming focused on life skills, communication, independence, and vocational preparation. These programs help students transition into community participation and employment opportunities. The goal is not to view one pathway as better than another, but rather to recognize that students have different strengths, goals, and support needs. And inclusive education means valuing all pathways and helping students reach meaningful outcomes. Early intervention is critical because the foundational gaps can affect future learning. When students struggle with literacy, numeracy, communication, or self-regulation in the early grades, those challenges often become more significant over time if supports are not provided. For example, a student who struggles with phonics and reading comprehension in grade 1 may later struggle to understand textbooks, complete written assignments, or participate confidently in class discussions. Similarly, missing foundational math concepts can affect a student's ability to understand more advanced problem solving later on. Early intervention doesn't mean removing students from learning opportunities. Instead, it means identifying the barriers that are there early on and providing targeted supports and opportunities while still exposing students to grade level curriculum and classroom experiences. Students should continue feeling included in the classroom community while receiving the support they need. Teachers can provide scaffolds such as visual supports, sentence starters, graphic organizers, chunked instructions, manipulatives, guided practice, and assistive technology. Small group instruction is critical. And intervention programs, which is a small group instruction, is a kind of intervention program. It can also help reinforce foundational skills, and I found this one very, very important in my classroom that I do on a daily. Another important aspect of early intervention is collaboration with families and support staff. Parents often notice concerns sometimes before school staff do, and communication between home and school helps ensure consistency in supporting the student. Research consistently shows that early intervention improves long-term outcomes for students academically, socially, and emotionally. The earlier barriers are addressed, the greater the likelihood that students will build confidence and experience success in school. This section highlights the importance of understanding student experiences and recognizing that students experience learning environments differently. Sometimes educators focus heavily on behavior without fully understanding the reason behind it. UDL, though, encourages students to think about what students need in order to succeed. For example, some students focus better while moving, rocking, standing, or using fidgets. Others may become more overwhelmed by excessive noise, visual clutter, or too many verbal directions at once. And some students may appear distracted or disengaged when they're actually overstimulated or anxious. The key message here is that different brains learn differently. Students are not intentionally trying to be difficult when they need movement breaks, visuals, or repetition, or extra processing time. Instead, often these supports are what allow students to regulate themselves and participate successfully in learning. Understanding student perspectives also means listening to student voice. Students can often explain what helps them learn best when given the opportunity. Some students may prefer verbal explanations, while others may prefer visual or hands-on learning. Giving students choice and opportunities for self-advocacy increases their independence and confidence. Creating supportive environments also helps students feel emotionally safe. Students are more willing to take academic risks when they know mistakes are accepted as part of learning and when they feel respected by teachers and peers. Ultimately, understanding student perspectives remind us that inclusion is not only about academics, but it's also about their emotional and social well-being, belonging, and dignity in our classroom. Traditionally, education often focused on identifying deficits first through testing, labels, and diagnoses. Students were frequently viewed through the lens of what they could not do rather than what supports could help them succeed. And in many traditional models, students had to demonstrate significant struggles before receiving support. And this reactive approach often resulted in frustration, lowered self-esteem, and delayed intervention. Students sometimes felt excluded or labeled as different before supports were implemented. UDL, though, shifts this focus towards designing classrooms that are accessible from the beginning. Instead of asking students to adapt to one teaching method, UDL encourages teachers to adapt learning environments to support their learner variability. This proactive approach reduces barriers before they become major problems. For example, instead of only providing audio supports to one student after difficulty is identified, teachers may provide audio options for all students from the start. This normalizes accessibility tools and reduces stigma. UDL also promotes flexibility in teaching methods, assessment, classroom environments, and participation styles. Students are given multiple opportunities to engage and demonstrate their learning. The shift from deficit-based thinking to strength-based thinking is very important. Rather than focusing on limitations, educators focus on student potential and how the environment can support success. This creates more equitable and inclusive classrooms for all learners. Inclusive classrooms have lots of important features that support student success. First, they have clear learning goals so students understand what they're learning and why it matters. When students know the purpose of learning, engagement often increases. Inclusive classrooms also provide flexible supports. Students may access visual schedules, anchor charts, assistive technology, flexible seating, movement breaks, or alternative formats for assignments. These supports help reduce barriers and increase participation. Collaboration is another key feature. Students benefit from opportunities to work with peers through discussions, partner work, and group activities. Collaborative learning builds communication skills, confidence, and social connections. Emotionally safe environments are equally as important. Students need to feel respected, valued, and comfortable asking questions or making mistakes. Teachers play a major role in creating classroom cultures where diversity and differences are accepted and celebrated. Student voice and self-reflection are also essential components of the inclusive classroom. Students should have the opportunity to share their opinions, reflect on their progress, and identify strategies that help them learn best. This builds self-awareness and independence. Inclusive classrooms are not identical for every student. Equity means students receive what they need to succeed, which may look different from one learner to another. The goal is not sameness, but instead fairness and accessibility. UDL encourages flexible assessment methods because students demonstrate understanding in different ways. Traditionally, many classrooms relied heavily on written tests or essays as the primary form of assessment. However, this doesn't actually accurately reflect what all students know or understand. Flexible assessments allow students to demonstrate learning through various formats like presentations, podcasts, videos, visual projects, discussions, games, or written work, and this can be adjusted based on the grade level. The curriculum expectations remain the same, but the pathway to demonstrate their understanding becomes more accessible. For example, a student with strong verbal communication skills but weaker writing ability may perform better through an oral presentation, and another student may demonstrate an understanding more effectively through creating a visual model or a digital project. Flexible assessment also increases engagement and motivation because students often feel more ownership when they have choices. It allows teachers to assess actual understanding rather than simply assessing one mode of communication. Assessment should focus on learning goals rather than rigid formats whenever possible. Teachers can still maintain high expectations while offering flexibility in how students reach those expectations. Just like this program, just like this assignment where I chose to use PowerPoint because I'm comfortable with that. Providing multiple forms of assessment also supports culturally responsive teaching because students from diverse backgrounds may communicate and express understanding differently. UDL encourages educators to value these differences rather than viewing them as deficits. Accommodations support students without changing curriculum expectations. That's the key and definition about what accommodations is. The learning goals remain the same, but students receive support that help them access learning more effectively. Examples of accommodation could include extra time, speech-to-text software, visual schedules, preferential seating like sitting closer to the front or near the teacher, assistive technology, chunked instructions, quiet workspaces, or scribing, like writing for students. These supports reduce barriers while allowing students to work toward grade level expectations to show their understanding. An important misconception is that accommodations provide unfair advantages. In reality, though, accommodations level the playing field by helping students access learning in ways that meet their needs. An important point is that students don't need an IEP to receive accommodations as well. Teachers can and should provide classroom accommodations whenever needed to support student success. Many accommodations benefit all learners, not just the students with identified exceptionalities. For example, visual schedules and clear instructions can help many students stay organized and focused. Flexible seating or movement breaks may support concentration and regulation for a wide range of learners. Accommodations are most effective when they are implemented consistently and when students understand how to use them independently. Building self-advocacy skills is also important so students can communicate what supports help them learn best and what they need. Modifications are different from accommodations because they change the curriculum expectations themselves. A student may work on expectations from a lower grade level or complete alternative outcomes that are adjusted to their learning needs. For example, a grade 5 student may be working on grade 3 math expectations if their foundational skills need strengthening. The learning goals are adjusted to better match the student's current abilities and developmental level. In elementary school, modifications are possible because teachers can adjust curriculum expectations when appropriate with an IEP. However, in high school diploma courses, curriculum expectations can't be modified if students are earning credits toward graduation. Students still may receive accommodations, but the expectations themselves are unchanged in high school. This highlights the importance of early intervention and foundational skill development during the elementary years. Students need strong academic foundations before transitioning into secondary school pathways. Modifications should always be very carefully considered and documented because they can impact future pathways and opportunities. Teachers, families, and support teams need to collaborate to determine what is most appropriate for the student. The overall goal remains supporting meaningful learning and helping students experience success while building confidence and independence. The tiered support model is an important framework used in schools to provide different levels of support depending on student needs. The model is often divided into 3 tiers, with each tier becoming more targeted and individualized. Tier 1 refers to strong universal instruction that is provided to all students. This includes high-quality teaching practices, clear routines, differentiating instruction, and inclusive classroom strategies. Most students should be successful with strong Tier 1 supports in place. UDL is closely connected to Tier 1 because it focuses on designing instruction that's accessible for everyone from the beginning. Tier 2 includes targeted interventions for students who require additional supports beyond regular classroom instruction. These could be small groups focusing on specific skill areas such as reading comprehension, phonics, math, or self-regulation. Tier 3 involves intensive individualized support for students with more significant or ongoing needs. This may involve specialized programming, individualized intervention plans, or support from outside professionals such as psychologists or speech and language pathologists. An important aspect of the tiered support model is that movement between tiers is flexible. Students are not permanently placed into one category. Instead, teachers and support staff continuously collect data and monitor their students' progress over time to determine what level of support is needed. School-based team meetings are an important part of collaborative problem solving within schools. These meetings bring together teachers, admin, families, and support staff to discuss students' strengths, concerns, progress, and next steps. The purpose of these meetings is not simply to identify the problems, but to work collaboratively to determine how best to support the student. Teachers may share classroom observations, assessment data, intervention strategies, and behavioral or academic concerns, and families also provide their valuable insight because they know the student best outside of school. There could also be support staff such as psychologists, speech and language pathologists, social workers, special education teachers, and educational assistants that can contribute their recommendations and strategies. And each professional brings a different perspective to that meeting in their area of expertise, which helps create a more comprehensive understanding of that student's needs. During these meetings, they could review intervention effectiveness, discuss their accommodations, monitor progress, or determine whether further assessments are needed. Sometimes these meetings may lead to the development or revision of an individual education plan, or an IEP as we say. These meetings also reinforce that special education is not the responsibility of one teacher alone, and supporting students is a team effort that requires ongoing communication, flexibility, and shared responsibility. So the IEP, the Individual Education Plan, it's a working document. It's a living document that outlines the supports a student requires in order to succeed at school. The IEP may include accommodations, modifications, or alternative expectations depending on that student's needs. Accommodations are the supports that help the student access their learning without changes to the curriculum, while modifications, like I said previously, involve changes to the curriculum, and you can find them here in the IEP. These IEPs are designed to be flexible and evolving documents. They can change throughout the year. Students need change over time, so IEPs should be regularly reviewed and updated throughout the school year, and teachers can monitor student progress and adjust supports as necessary to ensure that students are continue to grow and achieve success. An important misconception that I have noticed is that the IEP itself teaches the student. Instead, the IEP is simply a guide that helps teachers understand how to support the student effectively. The quality of instruction, relationships, and classroom environment still play a major role in student success. Parents and families are important partners in the IEP process. Schools communicate with families about goals, accommodations, progress, and transitions. Family input is valuable because parents often have important insights into strategies that work well for their child. IEPs also support transitions between grades and schools. As students move from elementary to secondary or from school into community programs or employment pathways, the IEP ensures continuity of support and planning. Ultimately, the purpose of an IEP is to help students access meaningful learning opportunities with supporting independence, confidence, and long-term success whoever they deal with, from class to class or school to school. Some students require alternative expectations that focus on functional life skills rather than traditional academic curriculum expectations. These expectations could involve communication skills, social-emotional learning, self-regulation, daily living skills, safety awareness, or getting ready for the workplace, like vocational preparation. Programs such as MAPS and STEPS, like I mentioned previously, help support students whose learning needs are better addressed through alternative programming. These pathways are designed to build independence and prepare students for community participation, employment opportunities, and everyday life skills. For example, students may work on skills such as budgeting, using public transportation, preparing meals, following schedules, communication in workplace settings, or building social relationships. So it's important to recognize that success looks different for every student, and inclusive education means valuing all forms of progress and recognizing that student strengths beyond traditional academic achievement. Some students may excel in hands-on learning, interpersonal skills, creativity, or practical tasks that are not always reflected through our standardized academic measures. Teachers can play an important role in maintaining the dignity and high expectations for students in all pathways. Alternative programming should never be viewed as less important. Instead, it should be recognized as individualized education that supports meaningful outcomes based on the student's strengths and needs. Ooh, this topic, AI and inclusive education. So AI, or artificial intelligence, is becoming increasingly present in our education system and can be very valuable as a tool for inclusive learning environments. AI has the potential to increase accessibility, organization, and independence for many students when used properly. For example, AI tools can help students when brainstorming. They can organize assignments, summarize information, create schedules, generate social stories, or receive writing support. Students with executive functioning challenges may benefit from tools that help break tasks into manageable steps or provide reminders and structures. AI can also support accessibility for students with language barriers or learning disabilities. Features such as speech-to-text, text-to-speech, translation tools, and reading supports can help students access curriculum more independently. But it's very important that students learn how to use AI responsibly and ethically. It should be there supporting their learning rather than replace their thinking or effort. Teachers still play a critical role in helping students develop problem-solving skills, critical thinking, creativity, and interpersonal communication. There are also concerns about over-reliance on technology, academic integrity, and unequal access to digital resources. Educators need to carefully balance the benefits of AI with thoughtful teaching practices and digital citizenship education. Transition to secondary school can be very challenging for many students, especially students with exceptionalities or executive functioning difficulties. In elementary students often spend most of the day with one teacher who knows them well and provides consistent routines and supports. But in high school or secondary school, students move between multiple classrooms and teachers throughout the day, and their expectations, teaching styles, routines, and classroom environments may differ significantly from one class to another. This can be very overwhelming for students who struggle with organization, transitions, emotional regulation, or social communication. Students are also expected to become more independent in secondary school. They must manage schedules, deadlines, assignments, materials, and multiple teacher expectations. For some students, these executive functioning demands become a major barrier to success. Consistency and communication therefore become extremely important. Secondary teachers, guidance counselors, special education staff, and families need to collaborate to ensure students continue receiving the full supports that they need. Clear routines, visual schedules, check-ins, and organizational supports can make a significant difference. Social and emotional challenges also may increase during high school. Students may experience anxiety, peer pressure, identity development issues, or challenges, or concerns about belonging. Inclusive and supportive school environments are especially important during this stage of development, as well as having at least one teacher or staff person that students feel comfortable speaking with about these issues. Successful transitions require planning, communication, and gradual skill building. The goal is to help students become more independent while still ensuring appropriate supports remain in place. Collaboration in special education. Special education is highly collaborative and relies on teamwork very much between many individuals. Classroom teachers are not expected to support students entirely on their own, unlike many think. Instead, inclusive education works best when educators collaborate with families, support staff from around the school, and community professionals. Teachers may work alongside psychologists, speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, social workers, education assistants, child and youth workers, admin, so our principal and vice principals, and our special education resource teachers, or some schools have, we call them learning support teachers. Each professional contributes different expertise and strategies to help support student success. Families are also essential members of the collaborative team. Parents and caregivers often have important knowledge about students' strengths, challenges, interests, routines, and successful strategies used at home. Strong relationships between schools and families improve communication and consistency. Collaboration also involves building clear teacher capacity. As classrooms become more diverse, ongoing professional learning is important, so educators continue developing inclusive teaching strategies. One important reality in education today is that no single teacher has all the answers. Collaboration allows educators to problem solve together, share ideas, and learn from one another. This helps create stronger supports for students while also reducing teacher burnout and stress. Inclusive education works best when there is shared commitment to supporting all learners. Collaboration helps schools create environments where students feel safe, supported, and capable of succeeding. All right, this is the end. So in my conclusion, every student deserves meaningful access to learning opportunities and a sense of belonging within the classroom community. Inclusive education is about more than simply placing students in the same room. It involves creating environments where they feel supported, respected, and capable of succeeding. UDL benefits all learners by increasing their flexibility and reducing barriers before students struggle. Rather than designing instruction for an average learner, UDL recognizes that variability is normal and expected in every classroom. Accommodations, they're not advantages or shortcuts. They are supports that help students access learning in equitable ways. Similarly, modifications and alternative expectations are designed to provide meaningful learning experiences that align with student needs and abilities best suited for them again. Collaboration between educators, families, administrators, and support teams is essential. Inclusive education requires teamwork, communication, flexibility, and ongoing reflection. No one person supports students alone. And as current and future educators, it is important to remember that students may not always learn in the ways that we expect, but it doesn't mean that they are incapable. Some students simply need different pathways, different supports, or different opportunities to demonstrate their strengths. Ultimately, the goal of inclusive education is to help every student feel valued, empowered, and successful. By using the UDL principles, flexible teaching practices, and collaborative supports, educators can create classrooms where all learners have the opportunity to thrive. Thank you for listening to my PowerPoint. Have a great day.